Are you tired of the establishment media distorting current events and peddling fake news to fit their geopolitical agenda? The Newsbud Academy is now offering information-packed online courses that will set the record straight on a number of important issues of the day. Beginning on June 10th, Professor Filip Kovacevic will present a lecture series, Foundations of Anglo-American and Russian Geopolitics. This lecture examines in detail the opposing geopolitical vision of Russian scholars and military officers, and offers material that has never before been presented in English and is largely unknown to American audiences. The registration deadline for this important lecture ends on May 10th, so make sure to sign up today. Please visit our website for more information. Newsbud, where media integrity matters. The suspected gas attack in northwestern Syria has all the hallmarks of a staged false flag event. It was designed to outrage the world and set the stage for the removal of Bashar al-Assad using U.S. military action and additional sanctions. Vladimir Putin said on April 11th, Russia has intelligence that similar provocations are in the works. He said the attack parallels the fake weapons of mass destruction Rus used by Bush and his neocons to invade Iraq in 2003.
Вот у нас есть информация от различных источников, что подобные провокации, а я по-другому это назвать не могу, готовятся и в других регионах Сирии, в том числе в южных пригородах Дамаска, где собираются подбросить опять какое-то вещество, обвинить в его применении сирийские официальные власти. Но мы считаем, что любое проявление подобного рода достойно того, чтобы его тщательным образом расследовать. Мы собираемся официально обратиться в соответствующую ООНовскую структуру в Гааге и призвать международное сообщество расследовать тщательно эти проявления.
Despite a lack of evidence Syria had anything to do with the attack, the Trump administration and the propaganda media in the United States are telling the American people both Syria and Russia are responsible. Trump's ambassador, Nikki Haley, is at the forefront of the effort to blame Syria and Russia. On the same day she was named a full member of the Principals Committee at Trump's NSC, Haley gave a theatrical presentation at the United Nations.
Yesterday morning, we awoke to pictures, to children foaming at the mouth, suffering convulsions, being carried in the arms of desperate parents. We saw rows of lifeless bodies, some still in diapers, some with visible scars of a chemical weapons attack. Look at those pictures. We cannot close our eyes to those pictures. We cannot close our minds of the responsibility to act.
The photos and presentation reportedly prompted Trump's daughter to urge her father to attack Syria. On April 6th, Trump issued a statement directly blaming Assad and Syria.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons. There can be no dispute that Syria used banned chemical weapons, violated its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention, and ignored the urging of the UN Security Council.
After Trump unleashed 59 cruise missiles on the Sharat airfield in Syria, The propaganda media made a point of insisting the Pentagon has taken extraordinary efforts to avoid so-called collateral damage. The Syrian news agency said 9 civilians, including 4 children, were killed during the attack.
It appears, as we are hearing from the Pentagon, steps were taken to mitigate casualties, civilian casualties, as well as Russian or Syrian casualties as well.
Hom's Governor Talal Barazi told the Lebanese television station Al Madian that 5 people had been killed and 7 more wounded. The day before Putin made his remarks, the war propaganda media, led by the New York Times, attempted to dispel alleged conspiracy theories about the false flag attack. The newspaper singled out We Are Change, InfoWars, Information Clearinghouse, Salon, and others as purveyors of fake news and conspiracy theories. The alleged chemical attack in the Damascus suburb of East Ghouta in August 2013 was used as a pretext by the Obama administration and its NATO allies to launch a quote-unquote humanitarian war against Syria, on the grounds that the Syrian government was killing its own people. Following the supposed attack, the International Institute for Peace, Justice, and Human Rights published a comprehensive report called The Chemical Attacks on East Ghouta to Justify Military Right to Protect Intervention in Syria. The report includes evidence provided by witnesses to support its conclusions. It was subsequently submitted to the United Nations Human Rights Council and given to foreign diplomats. The report points out that at the time of the alleged attack, there were no local residents in the area of East Ghouta. Most of the residents had left the neighborhood prior to combat actions. The dead bodies shown in the videos were identified by relatives who said they were killed in places far away from East Ghouta. Experts said the videos appeared to be scripted and showed the same children receiving medical aid in different ways. The videos were recycled for chemical attacks in other cities, including Jobar, Kafar Batna, and Ain Terma. More telling, according to the report, is the fact that many of the photos were of people killed during riots in Cairo, Egypt. Of the 1,465 supposed victims, only 8 burials were confirmed. Other reports claim the attack was indeed carried out, not by Assad but by Wahhabi rebel groups colluding with the Turkish government. Award-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh reported that the alleged attack was a false flag orchestrated by Turkish intelligence in order to cross President Obama's chemical weapons red line and draw the United States into the Syria war to topple Assad. Opposition leaders in Turkey said the government misled the public on the issue by asserting that sarin was provided by Russia.
As you know, I was on this show, and the London Review did a piece that I wrote months ago, questioning just the whole issue of who sarin was the title. It wasn't clear. This doesn't mean we know exactly what happened in Eastern Ghouta. What we do know, I'm talking about the military, the Pentagon, and the analysts, is that the sarin that was recovered wasn't the kind of sarin that exists in the Syrian arsenal. It just raises a grave question about one of the basic elements of the president's argument for planning to go to war.
First of all, I'm not saying I know, but I don't think our administration knew either. And don't forget, we're talking about a president who wanted to go to war against a country for which there's no national security interest here. We're not threatened by what's going on in Syria. He was talking about going to the war on the basis of having a case. What you just heard him say was just not so. We didn't have that kind of information in real time. In fact, I doubt if that my friends tell me that was a story just put together. The basic real point that I make is that we know, and we've known since spring, that the most radical jihadi, if you will, opposition group, rebel group, al-Nusra, we're talking about serious Salafists, Wahhabis, what you will, had access to sarin. There was a lot of intelligence reporting about it. The White House can say anything they want about it, but that is a fact, that they had access to sarin. So when the incident took place, the one thing they didn't do is they didn't consider the possibility that al-Nusra could have been one of the people that involved. They went right away to the notion that it had to be Bashar, and the world's press went with them, including the American press, and in fact, they didn't have much of a case.
A United Nations report suggested al-Nusra and other terrorist groups use chemical weapons against Syrian forces. According to the United Nations 2013 mission led by Carla Del Ponte, investigators interviewing victims, doctors, and field hospital personnel concluded that the Syrian army hasn't used sarin gas and chemical weapons in its battle against al-Qaeda and its associated groups in Syria. In other cases, investigators encountered evidence that alleged chemical weapons attacks by the Syrian military were staged by jihadist rebels and their supporters, but still decided to blame the government for 2 incidents in which chlorine was allegedly used.
Reasons why they say, well, this isn't regime change because we're not really positive who set off the gas. I mean, the group that's most likely to benefit from that is al-Qaeda. They ignite some gas, some people die, and blame it on Assad. Assad, I don't think, is an idiot. I don't think he would do this on purpose in order for the whole world to come down on him.
So you question whether Assad even used the gas and that he's just being set up.
I mean, look how many lies were told to us about Saddam Hussein prior to that build-up. War propaganda. It's endless. It happens all the time.
Well, we deal with certain...
Human Rights Watch, an NGO funded by George Soros, blamed the attack on the Syrian government.
Identifying and reconstructing the weapons used in the Ghouta attack was of fundamental importance because these are very large rocket systems. They have never been seen in the hands of opposition fighters, and they will be very difficult to hide. Our investigation indicates that both the 140mm rockets and the 330mm rockets used in this attack were in the stockpiles of the Syrian regime. We have the transfer records to prove that, and we also have videos of them being fired by Syrian soldiers during this conflict.
The sarin gas myth served as a cornerstone of the effort to portray Assad as a murderous dictator. However, when the New York Times published a story on Syria's alleged atrocities and use of chemical weapons, it didn't include the Ghouta story. During the First World War, 90,000 soldiers were killed by chemical agents, including chlorine and mustard gas. This led to the banning of these substances under the Geneva Protocol in 1925. Despite the brutality of such weapons, the British were keen on their use. Chemical weapons were used by the British during the Third Battle of Gaza in 1917, and after a more potent and deadly weapon was devised, they were used to put down uprisings in India, at the time a British colony. In addition, the weapons were used in Mesopotamia, later Iraq. The British dismissed criticism by stating in its Manual of Military Law that the rules of war applied only to conflicts, quote-unquote, between civilized nations. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the United States allowed the purchase and shipment of chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein. The U.S. Department of Commerce licensed 70 biological exports to Iraq between 1985 and 1989, including at least 21 batches of lethal strains of anthrax. The French newspaper Le Figaro, in an article published in 1998, said researchers at the Rockville, Maryland lab of American Type Culture Collection confirmed sending anthrax samples by mail order to Iraq. After the Gulf War, Iraq told weapons inspectors about how they had weaponized anthrax sent to them by the American corporation. In 1985, the U.S. Centers of Disease Control sent samples of an Israeli strain of West Nile virus to a microbiologist at the Basra University in Iraq. In addition, Iraq received other various toxins and bacteria, including botulins and E. coli. Corporations that sold dual-use chemicals and biological samples to Iraq for its weapon program include Phillips Petroleum, Unilever, Alcolac, Allied Signal, the American Type Culture Collection, and Teledyne. The U.S. knew Iraq used chemical weapons during the war. Hussein used chemical agents against a Kurdish village, killing as many as 5,000 people and injuring as many as 10,000 more, most of them civilians. Thousands more died in the following years from complications, diseases, and birth defects. During Bush's Iraq invasion, the Pentagon used phosphorus in Fallujah. Although phosphorus is not considered a chemical weapon because it is primarily used to illuminate battlefields and provide smoke for troop cover, it's classified as such when used directly against an enemy, as was the case in Fallujah. In addition, the U.S. used depleted uranium in Iraq. As a result, more than half the babies born in Fallujah from 2007 through 2010 were born with birth defects. According to Christopher Busby, the scientific secretary of the European Committee on Radiation Risk, depleted uranium has absolutely destroyed the genetic integrity of the population of Iraq. After authoring 2 of 4 reports published in 2012 on the health crisis in Iraq, Busby described Fallujah as having the highest rate of genetic damage in any population ever studied. The Israelis used phosphorus on Palestinian civilians. After it received criticism from human rights groups, in 2009 it bombed the United Nations compound in Gaza with white phosphorus. The U.S. military dumped 20 million gallons of chemical weapons, including Agent Orange, on Vietnam between 1962 and 1971. Vietnam estimates that as a result of the decade-long chemical attack, 400,000 people were killed or maimed. 500,000 babies have been born with birth defects, and 2 million have suffered from cancer or other illnesses. In 2012, the Red Cross estimated that 1 million people in Vietnam have disabilities or health problems related to Agent Orange. The U.S. used its own citizens as unwitting guinea pigs in chemical weapons tests. In the 1950s, the Army set up motorized blowers on top of residential high-rises in low-income, mostly black St. Louis neighborhoods, including areas where as much as 70% of the residents were children under the age of 12. Ambassador Haley's outrage, and that of her boss and his daughter, needs to be compared to the crimes committed against innocent civilians by the United States. Haley's theatrical United Nations presentation, reminiscent of Colin Powell's propaganda speech in February of 2003, is not designed to save children from the cruel ravages of war, but as a centerpiece for ongoing wars designed to last indefinitely. Donald Trump, our new war president, doesn't mourn the dead. If he did, he would apologize and make amends for killing hundreds of civilians in Mosul and Yemen.
For just a small subscription fee, you can become a member of the Newsbud community and help keep this website running. Your subscription will provide you with full community access to exclusive content, including videos and articles from Newsbud's team of experts and analysts, as well as a members-only monthly newsletter from Newsbud's founder, Sibel Edmonds. Sign up today for full access at newsbud.com.